Let me tell you a story about a 15-pound corset. Not a metaphor, a real body-tightening, breath-stealing corset. In the 1800s, it was considered normal. Women dressed with 6 to 8 petticoats, layers and layers of fabric, and their ever-present mandatory corset, which resulted in them carrying something like 15 pounds of extra weight around just in what they were wearing. Can you imagine? But this isn't normal to be shrouded like that. It was a restriction disguised as culture. And today, we're still wearing corsets, not always on our bodies. The real restriction is on our minds, on our confidence, on what we think we're allowed to do at this age. For me, that's 75. I don't know what that is for you. And in this video, I'm going to connect the story of a woman named Amelia Bloomer. And honestly, I only just recently learned about her and I'm so amazed. And it's so important to know about her because let's just say stories like this are disappearing from the public eye. Stories about her were published in the National Park newsletters, for example. And she was someone who lived during the 1800s. Amelia Bloomer, unbeknownst to me at the time, had the exact mindset shift that helped me create $500,000 my very first year as a copywriter online. Most of it without a website, with zero college degree, on my own at 17, no formal training, didn't even know what copywriting was until I read an article about it. And it's actually writing the words for marketing and messaging, emails, websites, video scripts, all of those things. And no safety net whatsoever. We were barely making it at the time. And so what I want you to think about while I'm sharing the story with you is what would it do for you to make even 1/10 of that? Because that number I just shared with you, that's not really the point, except to show you that we can really accomplish amazing things when we make a decision to do that. But what would even 1/10 of that do for you? For example, what would $50,000 in a year change for you? Because that's where this gets real. This isn't for a 22-year-old trying to make it and get started online. It's probably using TikTok and Instagram and things like that. This is for people like you and me, the experienced professional, the grown adult, the person with lived experience who's starting over, pivoting, rebuilding, refiring, wanting to do something besides just retire and do nothing. You might be new online, but you're not new to life. And what you've lived through, that's not baggage, that's capital. So back to Amelia Bloomer. And isn't that a great name? How perfect is that? She becomes known for speaking up about dress reform. This was in the 1800s because women they were literally being bound and shaped by corsets and heavy clothing, like I just mentioned, up to 15 pounds worth. And she also edited, this is going to get even more perfect here, a newspaper that was called The Lily. I love this floral theme. Okay. A paper that's become a platform where women's voices and rights could be discussed. And the National Park Service highlighted this, as I mentioned. And so the Bloomer outfit became a symbol of something bigger. And freedom of movement, freedom of breath, freedom of choice. And now here's the part I want you to really hear. She wasn't arguing about fashion. This wasn't about Fashion Week in New York or anything like that. She was arguing about what happens when you stop agreeing to be restricted. When we make a choice, a decision, and make a stand to step forward without apology and refuse to be restricted. And by the way, this corset idea isn't only about women, because restriction is not gendered. It shows up differently. Historically, even some men were wearing stays and corsets in certain eras to create a fashionable silhouette or support. And so if you're a man watching this and you're thinking, that's not my story, excuse me, yes, it is. Because if you've ever felt squeezed into a version of yourself that is smaller than what you know you can do, that's the corset. Or been squeezed into a role that wasn't the right one for you, or feeling overwhelmed with the responsibility assigned to you simply because of your gender. That's the corset. Here's the bridge between all of this. Amelia Bloomer fought to free other women from a physical corset so they could move, so they could breathe. And at a certain point in my life, I realized I was wearing that mental corset, the brain squeeze, a belief that would have kept me reasonable, safe, small, quiet. And that belief was some version of, who do you think you are to do that now? You can't do that. You're not even trained. You've never been able to accomplish much of anything. What makes you think this is going to be any different? That kind of stuff. So I did what she did. I took it off. Let me take you back for a minute. I had no college degree, no training program, no formal credentials, and I was on my own at 17. And when I was in my early 50s, I read an article online about copywriting. And I am not exaggerating when I tell you, my body reacted before my brain even could. The body tells the tale a lot of times. I broke out in a sweat. I literally just was like, oh my gosh, when I read this, just out of nowhere. Because something in me knew this is it. This is a real skill. This is a real path. This can change my life, change our life for my husband and myself. So I decided I'm going to become a copywriter. Not, I'll try, not maybe, not interesting. Let me think about that for a while. I decided right then and there. I literally got up and raced out to the living room where my husband was and said, I know what I'm going to do to save us. Because at that point, we were like, what are we going to do for income? How are we going to make it? We're already in our 50s. We have no plans for retirement. We have no money. We've been through some really tough things together. And we only got together in our 40s after the whole time of me being homeless. So here we were living in this old double-wide mobile home in Yuma, Arizona. Green shag carpeting, plastic sinks, the whole bit. It wasn't even what they call pit set, which is down on the ground. You had to go up the steps to get to the front door because it had that metal skirting stuff around the bottom. Definitely not glamorous. I think everything was olive green. Not a brand story, but just real life. It's what we could manage to buy at the time to have a home. But with my husband's blessing, the person who's believed in me before anybody else did, and sometimes even when I didn't, I sold that old mobile home for us to the first people who came to look at it for cash. This is a whole story for another time. I have so many stories to share with you. I can't cram them all into one video, but just how that all happened. I used one of those free ads, free newspaper. I think I paid a few bucks for the ad. But the thing was, I sold it for more than anybody else was getting around us. If you did, what are the common prices for the neighborhood and that type of stuff? We sold it for way more than most people were, simply because the people wanted it and how I positioned it. Because that mobile home had a view. That was its shining moment. It had an unrestricted view out into the desert. So we saw the sunrise and the glow of the sunset. And we had one saguaro cactus. Those are the ones with the arms. And they actually don't grow very much in Yuma. They do here where we are now in Tucson. So we had one and we had the view. And the distant view was a golf course. And so that's what I was really selling. And so there's a whole other lesson here about what are we really selling? What is the result? What is someone's really looking for? That includes persuasion in the marketing by zeroing in on what the person is actually looking for, the result that they want. Anyway, I digress because I do love marketing also. But I did this with a cheap little ad in black and white in a free newspaper. And as a matter of fact, I used a photo of the view. That's really what I sold, in grainy black and white photo that I had in my hand. It was a while back, so it wasn't a digital photo. And when I went in, they were like, don't you want a picture of the mobile home? And I was like, nope, selling the view. Somehow I knew to do that. So the point is, I wasn't starting from any kind of perfect conditions. We were going to live in our old RV, and that's how we were going to do this. I was starting from a decision. And it was amazing that I had a husband that was also supportive of that. And again, any of these things I talk about, I'm not saying you should do exactly what I did and you'll have the same result I did. What I'm saying is you have to be resourceful and you have to decide what you're willing to do, what you're willing to do to meet a goal you have or to become the person who can do that thing that you've set your sights on. And I had set my sights on becoming the person who would be a copywriter and make money from doing that. Now, here's the other thing that maybe you're already thinking, yeah, that's great. You were online, all that. No, I wasn't. I didn't know anything about how to do that. And here's the part that matters. My beloved perennials, those of us that are going to continue to learn and grow and thrive and not be categorized, renegade bloomers, as we join together, my people who think tech is the gatekeeper and the restriction and the barrier. My first year online was very low tech. Couldn't get probably much lower tech than I was. I didn't know how to have a website, so I didn't have one for a good portion of the time. I didn't have a fancy setup. I didn't have the online machine. This was before we even talked about funnels. I would have not had a clue about what you're talking about if you had mentioned that. And yet, for whatever reason, all these things that could be perceived as limitations and barriers didn't stop the results, because the result doesn't come from the tool. Got that? If you have a hammer and you're going to build something, it isn't the hammer that made that creation happen. It's you and how you use that. And it comes from the skill. It comes from, in this case, the courage to step up, to show up, to be seen, to be heard, and to bet on yourself, so to speak, by investing in yourself, investing in the belief about yourself. And so I created a plan only knowing a little tiny bit about one aspect of copywriting. And that aspect was called the sales letter. Now, let me tell you, that is one of the hardest forms. That is the most challenging. And remember, we weren't using AI. There was no ChatGPT. This was like, you're going to figure out how to write this stuff and the strategy about it. But the thing was, I didn't realize it was the hard one. I didn't, because I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know about email marketing or any of the other things. And sometimes ignorance goes beyond bliss. And when we say ignorance is bliss, sometimes it's grace, that not knowing, because you're not spending a bunch of time arguing with yourself the whole time. You're just moving. You're just gaining momentum. You're just taking some kind of action because you can see something for yourself. So within a few months, I went to a big marketing event called the Bensavenga 100. And it was hosted by a very famous copywriter named Gary Bensavenga. I will tell you more about Gary in that event on another video, because it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'd set a goal to be in the room where it was happening. And from that event, which again, I'll tell you about another time, I did almost $100,000 in booked projects. It was a like 2 or 3 day event. And I went with an intention. I knew what I was going to do when I got there. Let me just interject here. I did not have a website when I did this. I literally took a 1-page flyer that I wrote in a specific way about what I could do, and in a way that grabbed interest from the person I was talking to. And I literally worked the event in the sense of really getting to know people, talking to them, inquiring about what they were looking for, what they needed, and giving feedback and sharing my thoughts about what that could look like for them, and introducing myself with a simple 1-pager that I was carrying in a little briefcase that I borrowed, and I was wearing borrowed clothes too, by the way. And from that event, it grew. From that first $100,000 of bookings, it grew to $500,000 in my very first year. And that was back in 2005. And it just grew from there. And that whole beginning, that whole first year, most of it was without a website. And again, let me say this clearly. I am not selling you a fantasy that everybody will hit that their first year and that's the goal and all of that. That is actually not the point. The point is, if I could do that with low tech, no degree, no perfect plan, then what's possible for you? It's entirely possible you're way smarter than me, certainly better educated than I was when I did that. Maybe you've had a lot of other opportunities that have made things a little easier for you, paving the way for your experience and your expertise. Maybe you've had tough times just like I did. But the question is, what's possible when you stop wearing the corset. Stop allowing that to encase you. And here's the part I didn't really understand until later. The main reason that first year worked the way it did, and I only honestly really understood this on the last few years, is that I simply did not entertain the thought that I would fail. I had so many people over the years when I'd hear the story say, how did you do that? What made the difference? How is it that you were able to do that? And I finally realized it's because I simply didn't look at any other option except I am becoming a copywriter and it's going to work. I didn't sit around deciding if it would work, wondering if it would work. I decided it was happening. I committed to it happening. And then I acted like it was true. Going to this event with all these really high-powered copywriters and marketing companies and publishers, and I'm in borrowed clothes, carrying a borrowed briefcase, probably looking like I just fell off the turnip truck in some ways because I'm in the middle of New York City. It was at the St. Regis Hotel. The rooms are like $700 a day, but there I was. And in that first year especially, I didn't really even have a number in mind of, oh, I'm going to make this much. I think I might have probably thought something like, if I could just hit six figures, this elusive six figures everybody talks about, hard to even imagine that was possible. I think I'd never made more than about maybe 32,000 a year before that. But I didn't obsess about it. I obsessed about becoming the thing, becoming the person who could do the thing, a copywriter. I obsessed about that. And I kept going. I kept learning to write. I learned about the different aspects of marketing, about how this all worked online. Even when I didn't know how, I just kept going forward. And sometimes I was what I call 3 steps ahead. I would have a particular writing assignment and it'd be like, I'm researching exactly how I'm going to do this. So I'm staying 3 steps ahead of what I actually had to do. Even when it was messy, even when it was new, even when it was scary sometimes. And it got to the point, though, that my husband, Ron, had to remind me how much I actually made, how much was actually coming in. Because the other thing I figured out right from the beginning is I got paid in advance. I got paid before I actually did the work, because the words are your commodity. You can't go collect them. You can't go say, I want them back now because you haven't paid your bill, or I'm turning off those words. So I got paid in advance. But I wasn't staring at a scoreboard. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is how much I'm making. And I was excited when I got paid, obviously. But I was more tuned into becoming the person that could do the thing. Shifting identity, shifting belief, following my intuition, following the inner guidance, believing in it, believing that there was a purpose to all of this. And that is such an important aspect of this, because your results are what we call a lagging indicator. So your identity and your actions have to come first. That comes first before you even can see the results. So you're heading out into the wilderness, believing and trusting and committing to a process. So here's a message for you today, my experienced people, the ones starting over. When we talk about bringing your expertise forward, when we talk about tapping into what you already know to make money from it, to draw off of your areas of expertise and experience that you may be undervaluing right this very minute, because sometimes it's not even expertise in the obvious way. That's part of what was happening for me at that time. Sometimes it's intuitive guidance, pattern recognition, life experience, your ability to read humans, to understand how to connect, your ability to listen, such an important aspect of this, your ability to listen and to watch for the nuances. I call it listening between the lines, to hear what's not being even said, not being articulated, your ability to make meaning, your willingness to learn, your willingness to fight for your future, to embrace that combination. All of those things is a force. And you know what? Most perennials underestimate it. We devalue it. We think it's not enough. So yes, I'm going to say it out loud. I made $500,000 my first year online. I was already 53 when I started to turn 54 during that first year. And I'm telling you this for one reason. Proof. Not pressure, not comparison, proof. Here I am. Because if your brain hears $500,000 and immediately says, that's not me, must not be nice, or anything like that, good. Because now we can have a real conversation. So what would it do for you even to make 1/10 of that? What would $50,000 more a year do for you? Pay off debt, create safety, fund a move to where you'd rather live, build that little cabin in the woods, help a grandchild, give you breathing room, give you relief that you're going to be okay, even if you haven't got a retirement fund. And listen, I wasn't great at managing the big money. I know what we did with it a lot of the time, but I didn't know how to plan. I didn't know, I had no experience with that. My whole life growing up, my family was in lack, always worrying and trying to figure out how they were going to make it. It was always like that. Not poor, but poor planning. Absolutely. But the thing is, 1/10 is not a small thing. And it starts with taking off the corset. Again, I'm not promising anybody's going to make anything. You may make absolutely nothing. You decide to sit back and say, yeah, not for me. There's no possible way. Whatever, the old story's kicking in and taking charge of you and your life. So because of that, we'll call it my Corset-Off method, my late blooming method. So let's go through something that is simple, repeatable, little plan without a corset. So the first step is, okay, let's just talk about our metaphorical corset here, the one on your mind. What is the name of that? What belief is tightening your chest, tightening your ribs, squeezing in on you? They may sound like, I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm not ready. I'm not techie. Nobody wants what I know. I have to start from scratch. Yeah, can sound like that. So name it, because unnamed beliefs run your business from the shadows. They run your life from the shadows, lurking there like phantoms, but ever present. Step 2, call it what it is. That belief is not wisdom. It's conditioning. It's culture. It's somebody else's fear. It's a modern day corset that somebody else trusts you up in, okay, with or without your permission. Step 3, let's replace it with a working truth. No fluffy affirmations. I do use mantras and that type of thing in my business, but we're not talking just random over the top kind of stuff. We want a working truth you can operate from, real world. So here's some examples. Things that you can be saying to yourself. My experience shortens the learning curve. I've already proven that I can learn new things. I can learn tools. I already have wisdom. I don't need perfect. I need momentum. I'm not starting over. I'm starting from depth. I'm opening the door to a next chapter. I'm embracing my next act, whether second, third, fourth, whatever that might be. I'm right on time. And I'm not done yet. Step 4, run one revenue experiment. We're not talking about a 5-year plan, okay? One experiment, and it could be one offer. It could be one paid project. Someone pays you to actually do something for them. One piece of outreach, just that, just reaching out to someone. Hey, I'm starting a new thing, or hey, I thought of you that you might be interested in this. Just one outreach, one conversation that leads to cash. What would that look like? What would that sound like? Who might you have that conversation with? One action is the solvent. The action dissolves the corsets, right? It's like pouring the solvent on the corset is disappearing. And I don't know what that might be for you. Maybe you're a dog walker. Maybe you can write someone's resume. Maybe you're going to get on a call with them and just coach them a little bit and just help them to feel better about themselves by pointing out a few things or listening closely, being that person that's there for them. Maybe you have other skills that are a done-for-you service of some kind. Maybe you're going to mow lawns, wash cars, plant gardens, pull weeds. I don't know. Maybe you're going to change the world. Maybe you're going to start the next multi-million-dollar corporation. I don't know what that is. But what one conversation could you have that might lead someone to decide they would like to do some work with you? Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Let me say a quick word about AI. Because people think AI is the advantage. No, not exactly. AI is the tool. The advantage is the human. Remember what I said earlier? It's not the tool that got the thing done. It's the knowledge, it's the skill, it's the human element. It's your heart and soul, your voice, your expertise, your wisdom, your experience, all of those things. The advantage is your discernment, your judgment, your taste, your ability, your lived experience, your ability to know what matters. So yeah, I use AI, absolutely. I definitely do. But I use it as a strategist assistant. I use it as a helper, a supporter, an idea expander, a creativity multiplier, right? Not as a replacement for my brain. That's the whole issue. We need to be the leaders. We need to be the ones that thinking up the ideas, the concepts, and AI can help you expand it or see places in it where you might not have noticed something. And that's exactly why perennials can win right now, because the market is drowning in content, what some people call AI slop, just churning out, sounds like everybody else, sounds mechanical, sounds robotic, but starving for wisdom and connection and relationship and community. And that's exactly what my goal is. That's my mission. I'm building a community. I'm building a place where we can connect, because I've called myself this many times. I'm a classic late bloomer. It just seems to take me longer to get to some things or to figure them out or to understand or to have that enlightening moment, whatever you want to call it. But I'm here to tell you, we are not done. You are not done. I'm certainly not done. And it's not too late. There's a whole chapter available to you right now, a whole next dimension of your life. What I sometimes call the best of your life is the rest of your life. When you stop agreeing to be restricted, when you stop agreeing to be silenced. And again, I want everyone to know about Amelia Bloomer, because there's actually statues built to her with Susan B. Anthony, bronze statues. Right now, I'm concerned some of those things are going to disappear, that they're going to get shoved into the shadows, forgotten, abandoned, not popular in certain groups anymore. And so I want us to remember and to acknowledge and to understand and to learn from the amazing people who have come before, the generations, the ancestors that have come before. And Amelia Bloomer is right up there at the top. So here's your next step. If you want to throw off these restrictions, if you want to find that path for yourself, if you know you're not done yet, if you want to do this with support, with community, with a tribe of people who are also taking off the corset, come join my Renegade Bloomer community. We don't ask for permission. So yeah, we're renegade in that way, blooming together at whatever point we are in life. And the thing is, you can start in this community for only $9. Just $9. It's less than the fancy drink at Starbucks or burger and fries at In-N-Out. The link for this is in the description. If you're curious, take a look. Come on over. Look around. See if it feels like home. See if there's a prompting for you, because this is not meant to be a solo act. We're not meant to be out here in isolation doing this alone. That is darn hard. Even if we're, like me, introverted in certain ways, we need community. We need support. We need to know we aren't alone in that sense, that emotionally, energetically, we're not alone. We may live alone. We may be estranged from family. We may be on our own for the first time ever in our lives. Who knows? But we grow, we glow, we bloom together. and just knowing that there are friendships and support and peer groups that are just like you. And so I'm going to end this video now where I always end it. Thank you for being here with me. And this is a long one and sticking with me all the way to the end, because the thing is, it is never too late. I'm not done. You're not done. And again, never too late. So take a breath, loosen those laces, take that next step. I would love to see you inside the Renegade Bloomer community. This is Tina Lorenz. I want to thank you for being here today. And I will be talking to you again very soon. Bye for now.